Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. First of all, there's a lawnmower outside that's going on. Sorry about that. I'll try to talk over it. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Anna Guida. I'm the project manager for Empower Idaho. Empower Idaho provides education and advocacy for adults and consumers, adult consumers and behavioral health services. I just really want to acknowledge that 2020 has been quite a year, and we all have to pick and choose where we spend our time and energy. So we're just super grateful that you chose to spend from noon to 1 today with us, which may be your lunch break. So we just are very appreciative. Thank you. I can guarantee it will be worth your time because Danielle is awesome. So I'm going to give a quick intro for Danielle, then I'll hand it off to her. Real quick, if you have questions throughout, please use the chat box to ask them. And we'll be stopping every 15 minutes to kind of address those. So the chat box is in your control panel. So Danielle Boise is an anti-diet dietitian and a registered yoga teacher. She graduated with her undergraduate degree at University of Idaho and is working towards completing her graduate degree in science of nutrition at Idaho State University. She completed her 200-hour yoga teacher training and maintains her yoga registration with Yoga Alliance. Danielle is from Boise, Idaho, and naturally enjoys spending as much time as she can outside. When she isn't working on diet culture, you can find her reading a good book or watching a 90s sitcom. Also, Danielle has an excellent Instagram page that I'm just going to go ahead and promote called _gently_nourished_. We've been following it for a few weeks, and Empower Idaho has, and they have great content. It's just a great page to follow. So feel free to do that. Handing off to Danielle. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. This is my first webinar, so I appreciate you being here and bearing with me. As I like to say, I'm pretty technologically challenged, so if something comes up or the PowerPoint cuts out, like Anna said, please use your chat box. I might not even know something's going awry, so please just let us know, and welcome to the webinar. So I titled this webinar, Health at Every Size and Intuitive Eating, Promoting Positive Health, because that's exactly what these two principles do. And so I hope you guys kind of catch the theme here at the bottom with the plants and just promoting that we all come in different shapes and sizes. And so I love plants and health at every size, so that's why I chose that picture. Okay. All right, so just a little more about me. Like Anna mentioned, I'm a dietitian and a yoga teacher. I work at an eating disorder clinic here in Boise, Idaho, and I've had the great honor of working with people who are suffering from eating disorders for almost 3 years. It's a great passion of mine, and I absolutely feel really grateful that I love what I do. I'm finishing my master's degree at Idaho State, and like Anna already promoted, which thank you, I have a blog and an Instagram account called Gently Nourished, where I share my wealth of information and just all the things I have access to people who might not have access. So that's a great place to reach me. Born in Idaho, I have a dog named Junie, and I just really love living in Idaho and being here. So again, thanks for joining us. All right, so I kind of just put this first page up just to kind of shed some light on that health at every size, size diversity, and intuitive eating have really become really popular in common media. We're starting to see it more in magazines and magazine ads, things like that. And so I just thought it was really important. And typically when I do this presentation in person, I ask people if they've ever heard of health at every size or intuitive eating. So as we go throughout this presentation, my first question would just be, if you have heard of health at every size or intuitive eating, what have you heard about it? When did you hear about it? And just kind of plant that seed of the knowledge that you know, or maybe some things you're curious about. All right, so some of the objectives which were listed in the presentation marketing were, I want you to be able to understand what health at every size is and learn a little more terminology. So a lot of health at every size is discussing language. And so I want to give you guys a little bit of a piece of information about, what language goes along with this movement so we can start coming towards a more kind and compassionate way to talk to one another. Again, and being able to identify weight neutral terminology. I would want you guys to be able to understand some research outcomes at health at every size and intuitive eating, and learn about some of the misconceptions about health at every size and intuitive eating as well. And I want you guys to leave here with a lot of resources. So if this is something that you're interested in, or if you have more questions or desire to learn more, I want you guys to have some resources either for yourself or others. Okay, so starting off with some terminology. So in this presentation, you'll probably hear me say health promoting behaviors about 100 times. And we really want to be able to distinguish the difference between weight loss versus health promoting behaviors. So a lot of times weight loss gets a lot of credit for health improvement. But I kind of want to show you guys, some ways to look more critically at research and what you hear in media to be able to distinguish weight loss versus behaviors that actually improve our health, because we know that weight and weight loss is not a behavior. And so we really want to focus on those things that do promote our health, that we have a lot of research that backs up that improves our health, that have nothing to do with weight loss and are completely independent. Anna mentioned in my bio that I like to fight down diet culture. And so for those of you who have never heard the word or are kind of unfamiliar, it's becoming more popular in mainstream. People are using this word more often, but I want to give credits to where I got this definition. So Christy Harrison is a wonderful dietitian who has a podcast, a blog, and has recently written a book, which I will share with you later. So her definition of diet culture is one that worships thinness, a culture in which weight loss equals a higher status, a culture that demonizes certain ways of eating, and most importantly, oppresses those people who don't fit into this ideal. So after saying this, I can imagine that most of us are thinking we definitely live in this culture, especially here in the United States. This culture is very prevalent. Most of us were raised in it and continue to live in it. So just because you aren't on a diet doesn't mean that you're not engaging with or living in a world that is promoting diet culture. It's happening all around us. So I really like the way that Christy Harrison defined that term. And so you'll hear that throughout my presentation. And if this topic interests you, you'll hear it a lot of that language used with other providers as well. So as I mentioned before, person-centered language is a huge part of these movements. So when we talk about health at every size and intuitive eating, the whole idea of these two paradigms is to start treating people with more humanity. So we really want to look at how can we create a language around person-centered language. So instead of using underweight, overweight, normal weight, or obese or fat, using terms such as person at a higher weight or lower weight, person with a larger or smaller sized body, a person who is full figured, plus size, higher end of the weight spectrum. And I also put fat on this side as well. So there's a little asterisk by both of these because with a lot of fat activism, that word used to have a negative connotation to it. And with all the activism in our world now, we're really trying to remove that negative energy held with that word as it's just a descriptive word. But again, being sensitive to all people, a lot of people have a lot of trauma with bullying. And so we just, I put that on both sides because we just want to be really aware and compassionate of other people's lived experiences. So being in the healthcare industry, I recognize and understand that in a lot of medical jargon, underweight, overweight, and obese are used as diagnostic terms. And so another way to do that would be saying a person who suffers from obesity, because I recognize working with insurance and reading a lot of medical journals that word is used quite often. So we're just planting seeds and being aware and seeing how we can change that language to be more person-centered. All right, so, and like Anna said, I love an interactive presentation, and it's really interesting for me to do this without having people to interact with. So please write down questions, any thoughts, comments. I'd love to address that. I want this to be an open dialogue because for some of you, it might be a new concept. So to start off with our health at every size section, I want to define what health at every size is. And a lot of the health at every size information that I'm going to be talking about today was from an organization called ASDA, which is the Association for Size Diversity in Health, and I'll give you more info about that on the next slide. So health at every size is defined as supporting people in adopting health habits for the sake of well-being rather than weight control. So essentially, again, we're helping people find health-promoting behaviors that are right for them, that align with their values and lifestyle, that promote their health and well-being, whatever that looks like for them, without focusing on weight control at all, okay? So again, like I said, a lot of this information is coming from ASDA, and this is their logo down at the bottom. So we're going to go through each principle. So they broke down kind of, encompassing what health at every size is into little sections. So the first principle is health enhancement, weight inclusivity, respectful care, eating for well-being, and life-enhancing movement. So a little background on health at every size. It's taken a lot of forms and can be traced back to fat activism in the 60s, but can even be traced back further. And so I wanted to acknowledge all the work that people, providers, the community has done before this point in time to get us to this place of size diversity and health at every size. But it's more recently take a bigger presence with a book called Health at Every Size. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in further slides. Okay, so the first principle is health enhancement. And what this means is you want to be able to improve access to information, services, and help people with their physical, mental, social, and spiritual health. A lot of our culture is focused on the physical health aspect, but health is multifaceted. It's supposed to be well-rounded and diverse. It's not necessarily one piece. Physical health is part of that piece, but when we focus so much on that physical health piece, other parts of I call it my health pie, suffer. And so I really like talking about the World Health Organization definition of health. And they define it as health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and is not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And so I like talking about this because when I'm working with clients, I have them create a diagram of, what does your wheel of health look like? Spiritual, physical, mental, and defining, when your life is well balanced, what do those other areas of health look like? And so I think it's important for us when we're talking about, stripped down to its nuts and bolts, improving health, we have to look at all areas of this. And it's different for everyone. So, what's important to me might not be important to you, and that's okay. So we just have to figure out a way that each individual is getting their needs met. Okay, so this is a slide that ASDA provided in some of their free curriculum. And this is obviously a People Cover magazine. And so I don't know if most of you are familiar with Paula Deen, but she was a cook on the Food Network. I think she got mixed up with some controversial things. I'm not sure if she's still there, but I still like kind of what this message implies. So several years ago, she was diagnosed with diabetes, type 2. And when this happened, a few things came into play. So first, she received medical care, right? If you get a diagnosis, you're typically meeting with specialists, your primary care doctor, maybe a dietitian or a nurse who specializes in diabetes, and they get you all squared away with medications and interventions specifically tailored to you and your health concern. The second piece, she doubled up on her vegetables and began using healthier cooking methods. So if you aren't familiar with Paula Deen, she's from the South. She loved fried foods covered in butter, right? So she just changed and tweaked some things. I'm sure still enjoying those foods, but changed the way that she cooked overall. She began walking every day, and in the process, she lost 30 pounds. So when we say this, her diabetes improved and she feels great, and we say, how did this happen? Well, as I'm assuming most of you know, on the cover of the magazine, they don't talk about these other health promoting things that she did, but they kind of facet it and give credit to she lost 30 pounds and this is how, right? And so when people see that, it can be really misleading of, I have diabetes and I have to lose X amount of pounds. Well, weight loss occurred because she changed some of these lifestyle factors, which isn't a bad thing, but what improved her health are taking care of her medical needs, changing the way that she ate that supported that health condition, moving her body in a way that was right for her. So for some people who might not be familiar with diabetes, extreme weight loss is also a sign of unmanaged or uncontrolled diabetes. And so someone might say, I don't watch a lot of junk TV, I promise, but Abby Miller, she was on Dance Moms. She also was diagnosed with diabetes and lost a bunch of weight loss. And of course, our culture went crazy. But in reality, she was really sick. Her diabetes, blood sugars were really elevated. She wasn't maybe not taking care of herself. And so we can't look at someone and say, hey, she had diabetes and she lost all this weight, she must be doing really well, right? And so that's why at this Health at Every Size movement, we really just want to have a critical eye, and really take the focus off the weight loss, because by looking at someone, you can't tell whether they're in good health, whatever that means for them. So I love giving this example, when I do this presentation, because I think it's really important, especially when we're scrutinizing media. It's really important to have these tools in your back pocket. Okay, so the next principle is weight inclusivity. And so essentially what this principle means is being able to accept and respect the inherent diversity of body shapes and sizes and reject the idealizing or pathologizing of certain weights. So basically meaning, we're not looking at someone and saying they're in a big body, they must be in poor health, or looking at someone in a smaller body and assuming they're in good health, or assuming that someone who naturally lives in a larger body should be in a smaller body. I don't know when this happened, but health should not be appearance-based, right? So a lot of weight loss is very externally motivated. And what we know time and time again is that health-promoting behaviors improve health. And I hope someone in the audience is keeping track of how many times I say health-promoting behaviors, because I'm assuming I'm saying it quite a bit. But I really want you, if anything, to take away that health-promoting behaviors improve your health, and that the way your body looks on the outside in general should not determine your health. I did a post recently about I have a lot of people come into my office saying how they experience weight stigma in healthcare, and actually there was a woman in Canada who went to several doctors. She was experiencing a lot of pain, medical issues, and she lived in a larger body. And time again, the doctor said, you need to lose weight, your body's in pain, you need to lose weight. So I think by maybe, and don't quote me, maybe the fourth doctor decided to run further testing and found out that she had stage 4, I believe it was ovarian cancer, and she shortly died after that. And so in her obituary, she talked about her experiencing with weight stigma, and how, we really need to be treating the symptoms of people rather than looking at someone's body shape and saying, automatically you need to lose weight. And so part of this principle is being able to recognize all of our genetic blueprints. I think my mom's on this webinar, and I always use the example of, if you were to look at her and I in person, you would be able to tell our body shapes are very similar, right? We have similar builds, and that's my genetic blueprint. The body I live in was already biologically predetermined for me. And so just like we wouldn't expect someone with a size 6 shoe to be a size 7 shoe, or someone who's 5 foot tall to be 5'11", we really need to be able to respect the idea that we all have predetermined genetics for the way that we look. And not using that as a way to diagnose people or as a way to treat people with medical issues. I threw in this piece a little bit about BMI, just because I felt like it was relevant to being weight inclusive. So the BMI was never meant to be a diagnostic tool. It was created in the early 1800s by a man who had many talents. I think he was a statistician, an astronomer, but the one thing he wasn't in the medical profession. And so he created this random math equation to look at the body density of a population to observe trends. Well, what's happened with that when we started using it, a lot later on in culture, I want to say it was the 60s or before, somewhere around that time we started using it. And we started using it as an individualized diagnostic tool. So a lot of times, if you've ever seen a medical chart, if someone has a BMI of over 30, in their diagnosis, it will say obesity. So we're really using this as an individual tool to diagnose someone. It could be part of the tool of the overall picture, but it's certainly not the most important. And why we use it so often is because it's free, it's easily accessible, and it can be done anywhere. And that's a great tool for insurance to use for them. We know that adiposity differs, so the amount of fat we have on our body and where it's distributed differs among race, gender, bone mass, and genetics. And the BMI was created with straight white people in mind, right? So it wasn't used of an overall worldwide tool It was never meant to be used individually. So there's a lot of things that we can't take into account by just using BMI. And a lot of people don't know, in 1998, millions of people were moved from the overweight to obese category because the World Health Organization and the National Institute of Health had two different arenas for, or two different ranges for BMI, and they wanted those to be synced together. So not based off science, but wanting to conform, they changed the BMI scale. And so people who were, in a normal weight category were all of a sudden in the obesity category. And if you want to read more about this, Linda Bacon has a lot of research and she writes about this in her book. Okay, so the next principle is respectful care. And essentially this is being able to acknowledge our own biases and work to end weight discrimination, weight stigma, and weight bias. So provide information and services from an understanding that socioeconomic status, race, gender, sexual orientation, age, and other inequities impact weight stigma, and support environments that address these inequities. And so I think that's super important. So when we're looking at a person individually, their plan and their health is individual to them based off their lived experiences. And that has to be acknowledged when we're talking about care. We aren't experts of other people's bodies or lived experiences. And so we need to, come together as a community, as a healthcare profession, to be able to offer that respectful care for all people, while including all these potential inequities in mind. There's a lot of privilege in health and nutrition that isn't always addressed. And I like to talk about that a lot in groups here where I work, because I think it's really important, because the whole idea, again, is to help people improve their health. But if we're not taking into account someone's socioeconomic status, maybe their trauma, gender, what kind of job they have, we're really doing them a disservice. And one thing that I think is really important is having a safe space to process your own biases. We all have biases. I grew up in the same culture you did, right? So I grew up, I was born in the early 90s, which is like the tail end of like the fat-free era. I was told in school, like, your BMI needs to be this. I was in the red zone. And so I lived up in the same diet culture that you did. And it's taken me a long time to unpack biases, and I continue to unpack them all the time. I'm constantly learning new things, challenging my old ideals and beliefs. And so it's really important. I have supervision, which gives me a safe space to do that. But I think it's important to have a group of friends or support people that you trust to give you a space in order to process your biases, or just have a conversation about maybe something you're struggling with that has something to do with weight stigma, diet culture, and things like that. Okay, so I went further than 15 minutes, but Anna, are there any questions so far?
I am not seeing any questions so far, but just a quick reminder that the chat box will be the question box for everyone. So feel free to ask any questions you have for Danielle.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I just must be doing really great then. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so the next principle is eating for well-being. And this is probably my favorite one, because I'm a dietitian and food and nutrition are really important for me. So the idea of this principle in Health at Every Size is being able to promote flexible, individualized eating based off hunger and satiety, nutritional needs, and pleasure, rather than externally regulated eating plan that focuses on weight control. So in this paragraph, when we're saying externally regulated eating plan, we need an eating plan that is not based off your own innate and biological wisdom, but a plan that is based off any external cues around you. So it could be like, you have to eat X amount of calories at 9, 12, and 6. You have to, lose this amount of pounds, X, Y, and Z. And so basically, this principle is talking about ways that we can focus on nutrition that is individual and right for your biological needs to have you as a human thrive, rather than something externally regulated. One of my favorite quotes that my supervisor tells me all the time is, we need to use nutrition as a tool rather than a weapon. And nutrition is an ever-evolving science, and people hate that. They want black or white. Are almonds good or are they bad? Should I be doing this or should I be doing this, right? So it's a constantly ever-evolving science, and it's not absolute. We cannot control as much as we can control in scientific studies. We are all biologically diverse human beings, and there's just no way to know how X, Y, and Z affects person A compared to B. We can have a guess, and we do our best in science to show that, but it's ever evolving, right? I mean, I've lived through several diet fads. I was born in a fat-free fad, and now it's all about fat, right? So it's ever evolving, and if you look over the history of dieting, you'll continue to see the same dieting patterns come over and over again, and they just are resurfacing and remarketed in a different way. So there's a lot of great things that science can offer us. It's like a super highly respected profession. I respect all the studies that are out there, but we need to use those things as a tool and take those things with a grain of salt and continue to question what's being out there, because it's really important, because a lot of what we're seeing in magazines and social media is really weaponizing and using a fear-based approach to nutrition. And my favorite thing is that food is so much more than nutrition. The well-being aspect that comes from nutrition and food goes way beyond the nutrients in food. It's a part of our social engagement, our culture, tradition. It can be used for soothing, celebration, and a lot of times it's used as an act of nurturance and love. And so when we remove those things from nutrition and food, we're really missing a big picture. And so this idea that we need to come back to this place where food is celebrated for its cultural, traditional, and social engagement, while we also honor and respect the nutritional value of it. Okay, so on this slide, I wanted to throw in the dangers of dieting. It's not the principle of health at every size, but I think it's important to know why this principle is the way it is. So for those of you who don't know, the dieting industry is over a $65 billion a year industry, and I've seen it, some people say it's going to be a $200 billion a year industry in the next, X amount of years. But basically, wherever you get your number, we know that the dieting industry is a huge, multifaceted industry. But this industry has a 95% failure rate. And what this means is that 3 to 5% of people who go on a diet will maintain significant weight loss. 3 to 5%. And so there's a doctor out there, and she's like, why would I prescribe dieting when I know the failure rate is so high? I don't know any medication, any medical procedure that's on the market that has a 95% failure rate. Yet we continue to promote and encourage people to go on diets knowing there's a high failure rate. Dieting can also be a predictor of weight gain and a higher BMI later in life. Right, so our metabolic rate can change with each diet. Our body doesn't know that it's swimsuit season or you're getting ready for your best friend's wedding. All it knows and perceives is a threat of starvation. And so our body's one and only job is to keep us alive. So if it continues to see a pattern of, restrict and then gain the weight back, restrict and gain the weight back, your body is going to do whatever it can to protect itself from a threat. And for your body, dieting and restricting calories off of your biological needs is a threat. Dieting can cause a change in body shape, so changing the way that your body stores and distributes fat amongst the body. And most importantly, it decreases the trust you have in your body. I have so many people who come to me and say, I don't know what to eat anymore. Like, I had a dietitian friend, and she had a young gal come to her, and all she was eating was a Snicker bar every day. She's like, I don't know what to eat. I'm scared to eat everything. And so I'm just eating this one Snicker bar because I feel like it's okay. And so there's so much misinformation about nutrition, dieting, and weight loss that people have just really fallen out of tune with their bodies and don't really know how to nourish it. And something that's important to me to know is that dieting is a huge risk factor for developing a clinically diagnosable eating disorder or disordered eating patterns, especially in young adolescents, both male and female. So that's why it's such important for me to educate people on, what is the danger of dieting and, what are the consequences of that. Over on the right-hand side, I just posted some of these pictures because I think they're funny. The Slim Fast one, it's swimsuit season, you'll be ready too. To me, that has nothing to do with health. That has something to do with your external appearance. The portion controller belt, I just like to kind of use a shock value of some of the medical things that are out on the market that prevent people, are trying to get people to lose weight, to apply so much pressure that you're so uncomfortable to eat that you eat less. The one below of the ice cream cone was actually found in a 1970s National Geographic magazine. And I like to show this just to show how often fads are changing. So at that point, they were recommending a tablespoon of sugar to help with cravings. And essentially what I think they were meaning is that if your blood sugar is so low, increase it with sugar really fast and really quick so you have a burst of energy. And so I just think it's kind of funny where we are at now in the world of keto and high fat, low carb, that at one point in time, not very long ago, it was recommended having cookies and ice cream to lose weight and using those carbohydrates. And then this next one down here is Get Your Man Diet, just to kind of showing the deep roots of diet culture, go all the way back to the 50s and more, of really this was not created as a way to improve health, but there are so many other factors that it was created for that again have nothing to do with health. Okay, so I think this is the last one, and this principle is life enhancing movement. So I'm a yoga teacher and I think physical activity is really important. Excuse me. And so this principle is about supporting physical activities that allow people of all sizes, abilities, and interests to engage in enjoyable movement to the degree that they choose. So movement is encouraged. It's important for the body. It's important for mental health. If you have medical concerns, it can, be supportive of that and managing those conditions. But we need to create an environment and a culture of where, you don't need to go to CrossFit for an hour and a half every day for 6 days a week. If you love that and that's your self-care, by all means. But there's a wide range of what physical activity can do. And we know that even small amounts of physical activity and movement improve health. And so this idea is that we should encourage this for all people of all abilities. So, creating environments where people with disabilities can engage in movement. And the idea of, we know the benefits of exercise. And so let's make it accessible and a positive experience for all. There's a lot of research that shows, when we're not focusing on the way our body looks or calories, that we're more likely to stick to a movement or exercise program, and we're more likely to continue it for longer periods of time. So when it's used as a punishment or to change your body, then there's a likelihood that you might not continue or might not feel supported in order to do that. And then I just threw this last bullet point down here at the end that strength can be built at any size. So I have clients in larger bodies who have back pain. I'm like, let's get you into a physical therapist. You can work and build strength in your body right now at this size in your body right now. And so let's create an environment where we can do that and accept that you can live in a larger body or a smaller body and we can still work on building strength. Okay, so I like to talk about what health at every size is not, because there's a lot of misconceptions or misunderstandings about what health at every size is. So I'm going to go down this list of probably the most common ones I hear in my practice. But again, please use the chat box if you've heard of one, or if you have some reservations of like this idea of health is hard for me to accept because X, Y, and Z. I'd love for you to put that in the chat box too. So health at every size is not anti-weight loss. If you lose weight doing something great for yourself, you're not going to be shamed, or you shouldn't be being shamed by the health at every size community because we're body neutral. Your weight goes up and down throughout your life based off, there's times in your life where you're more active, times where you're more sedentary, time where you're more stressed, times where you're taking care of yourself a little bit better. And so the idea is that weight is off the table. If you lose weight, gain weight using this approach, it's supposed to be a neutral place. So I think a lot of people are very fearful of, if their body changes that, then they're not engaging at health at every size. It's not true. It's just weight is no longer the topic of conversation. Health at every size is not anti-health. We get that a lot, that, how could you say someone in a larger body is healthy? Well, there's a wide range, a wide spectrum of what health is. And so we want people to have the voice and advocacy to create, their own idea of health that works for them based off their values. And the whole idea of health at every size is to promote health. But the idea is that we're not focusing on weight loss or weight alone. It's not anti-dieter. Like I said, we all grew up in the same culture of dieting and weight loss. And just because you want to lose weight or are currently dieting does not mean that you can't start to incorporate health at every size. It doesn't mean you can't work with a health at every size provider. We're not anti-dieter, we're anti-diet culture. So there's a big distinction there of we're against the culture that makes people feel the need to diet and change their body, not against that person who's been succumbed to that culture. Health at every size is not saying that exercise and nutrition have no impact on health. We know the benefits of movement, and I'm a dietitian. I know that there are extreme benefits to nutrition. We're just framing it in a different way. It's not anti-medical nutrition therapy, and basically that's a fancy word for using nutrition to treat medical issues. So I've had clients who suffer from diabetes, and we've used this approach with them and improved their health markers, however they wanted them to be improved using this approach. So, we have to adjust, what their food looks like and to support that medical condition, but there's a way to do that in a weight neutral approach. Health at every size is not anti-science. In fact, health at every size has been studied and has been shown to be a more compassionate way to approach healthcare in supporting and promoting health promoting behaviors. And also health at every size is really critical of research articles, which I think we all should be, right? We kind of look and pick apart of, this research article found X, Y, and Z, and here's some underlying factors that might have affected that. It's not good or bad, it's just being aware of the science that's available to us. It's not saying that weight never has an impact on health. We know that there can be some health-related concerns, both on the lower and higher end of the spectrum of weight. But the idea is that there's so many more things that we could be focusing on that might give us a better picture of health that would be more helpful than actually focusing on the weight itself. And again, like I mentioned before, it's not saying that HAES practitioners can't work with people who desire weight loss. And it's not just for people in larger bodies or with binge eating disorder. Okay, so what health at every size is saying is that people of all sizes deserve to pursue health promoting behaviors in a respectful environment regardless of their size. So if you take anything away from the health at every size piece, just remember that it's trying to remove the weight stigma piece and allow people to have a respectful environment. Okay, so we have 20 minutes. I'm going to try to cruise through these and hopefully you guys have some questions. So the next part of this presentation is about intuitive eating. So what is intuitive eating? This is a self-care framework and how to approach food. It first appeared in 1995 by two wily dietitians who went against the grain. They wrote the first edition in 1995. When this first came out, it was research inspired, but now it's an evidence-based model to eating. So there's been over 120 published journal articles and studies about intuitive eating showing the benefits to health. And a big part of intuitive eating is being able to have interoceptive awareness. And so what this is having your own ability to feed ourselves appropriately based off your own internal cues versus external. And just to give a shout out, the new edition just came out and it's amazing. It has updated research and language and it's just awesome. So there's a picture of it on this slide. The new one is green and yellow and the older one is pink and purple. And there's also a workbook that goes along with this as well. Okay, so interoceptive awareness. So again, this is our ability to perceive physical sensation that arise from within the body. What does guilt feel like in the body? What does hunger and fullness feel like? And so being able to have tools in order to tap into that and feel those sensations within the body. It helps us focus on our biological and psychological needs. And the problem with focusing on the weight loss is that it actually inhibits us from connecting to our internal cues and signals. And a big portion of what's on this slide came from the new intuitive eating book. So I just wanted to give credit there. And then this was a direct quote that came out of the intuitive eating book, was that intuitive eating works by either enhancing interoceptive awareness or removes the obstacles to perceiving and responding to the felt sensations in the body. So that kind of just gives a little bit of a glimpse of how intuitive eating helps us get in touch with our own innate wisdom to take care of ourselves, which is a big framework for how all the intuitive eating principles started. Okay, so I'll go over the intuitive eating principles. There are 10 of them. So the first one is rejecting the diet mentality. And essentially the diet mentality is partly diet culture, but also the idea of, coming to terms with removing the fantasy aspect of, what weight loss will bring you, right? So when I lose weight, X, Y, and Z will happen. If I don't lose weight, X, Y, and Z won't happen. So it kind of removes the fantasy and really talks about, how can we give up and surrender to the idea of pursuing weight loss. And part of rejecting the diet mentality is learning about some of those consequences that chronic dieting and restriction or suppressing your weight have. The next one is honor your hunger, which might sound really simple, but it's really challenging for a lot of people, right? We live in a multitasking world. We're eating lunch, typing on the computer, and I do it too, right? I'm a human being, and sometimes I have to eat lunch at my desk. And again, this is being able to tune into your body and remove obstacles that kind of prevent you from listening to that hunger. There's a hunger scale in this book that's really important about, when you're at a 0 and you're numb to hunger, when you're at a 10, you're really full, and kind of practicing like, when can we notice those subtle signs of hunger and honor that? So we're not living on the extremes of hunger and fullness constantly. The third one is making peace with food. So essentially this one, and I just posted something on my Instagram today of all foods are nutritionally different, but morally equivalent. And what this means is you are not a good or bad person based off the food you put in your body. Coming to peace with all foods and, really removing the morality around those foods and coming to a place where all foods are guilt-free. The next one is challenging the food police. Basically, that is that inner self-critic of why'd you eat that? You're so gross. Look at her. She's so thin. And so it's coming in and being able to quiet that self-critic voice and offering yourself a more compassionate lens for your health and well-being. The fifth one is discovering the satisfaction factor. So food should be good. You should have satisfaction in food. And so being able to come and find the foods that you really enjoy and incorporate that in your well-being practice. The next one is feel your fullness. So being able to honor that fullness, just like we do with our hunger, and being able to recognize when is a comfortable level of satiety for you that gives you enough sustaining energy throughout the day. The next one is coping with your emotions with kindness. So essentially this can go both ways of having coping skills besides restricting food or overeating food that can help you cope with whatever your stressors are. But we know eating is emotional, it's emotional in nature. And so it's kind of coming and being able to find what does a healthy emotional eating relationship look like for you? When is it detrimental and when do you feel like it's healthy? The next one is respect your body. And so what this one is, and my favorite quote from this chapter is, we don't have to love every part of our body in order to respect it and take care of it. And so, in the body positive movement that we're seeing right now, especially if you're involved in social media, it can be really intimidating to see women who say, I love my body, it's perfect, I love every role, because for a lot of people, that doesn't seem very attainable. And so coming to a place, of neutrality and respect is a great place to be. So, we might not always like our body. It's kind of like a relationship. Someday you're okay with it. Someday you're mad at it. Someday you're frustrated with it. And someday you're happy. It's, being able to, and no matter what state it is, being able to learn how to respect it and take care of it, regardless of what the relationship is with your body. The ninth principle is movement, feel the difference. It's very similar to the health at every size principle. So finding movement you enjoy. Yes, raking your leaves is movement, cleaning the house is movement, walking your 4-year-old around the neighborhood is movement. So finding things you enjoy and knowing that you can step out of that traditional sense of exercise and be able to enjoy movement and do it for the sake of feeling good in your body rather than trying to punish it. The last principle is honoring your health with gentle nutrition. And there's a reason why this one's the last one. Because after we've worked through all of their 9 principles, and then you can come to a place and say, okay, is there something nutritionally that I want to change in my diet and my lifestyle that makes me feel good? If you have medical concerns or issues, like what is something that can be nutritionally based that might help support that health condition? But it's, again, coming from a really compassionate and kind place of, we want nutrition to enhance your life, not take away from it. And so, we have to do all these other principles first before we can come into a place where, we can honestly say, this nutritional choice for me really enhances my life. rather than like, I'm doing this to punish myself, right? Okay, so I just did this side-by-side comparison of intuitive eating versus diet mentality. So a diet mentality might sound like, I shouldn't eat that. An intuitive eating approach would be, do I want this? Instead of saying, I can eat whatever I want on my quote unquote cheat days or the weekends. An intuitive eating approach would be, I have the freedom to enjoy all foods. Instead of saying, I want dessert tonight, I need to exercise more. Saying from an intuitive eating approach that exercise does not dictate my food choices and vice versa. Diet mentality, I've been so bad today, I had pizza. And an intuitive eating approach would sound more like all foods are morally equivalent, nutritionally different. And again, removing that morality issue of you are not good or bad based off the foods that you eat. Diet mentality might sound like I'm hungry, but I just ate an hour ago, I can't eat again. And intuitive eating would sound like I trust my body and listen to its needs. There's kind of a joke on in the intuitive eating community of intuitive peeing. And so, it's really interesting comparing eating and peeing because, peeing seems so second nature. Like if you have to pee, it's not good or bad, like you just have to go pee, right? And so, seeing hunger and fullness kind of as that same innate biological cue of like, hey, I'm hungry, your body needs to be refueled. But no one's like, oh, I have to pee, but I just peed 20 minutes ago, I can't go again, right? And so just kind of, joking and comparing, like they're both biological signals our body is giving us. And so, coming to a place where we can honor those both kind of in the same regards or respect. So some of the benefits of intuitive eating, again, it was written in 1995, and then it was first published in a journal in 1998. So it's been on their radar and it's been studied for several years. And so what they found, and this is a review that Evelyn Tribole, she's one of the co-authors of Intuitive Eating. She created this for a conference this last January. And so this came directly from her presentation, which was cited up here. So intuitive eating has shown to have a decreased BMI, a decrease in the thin idealization. So people who practice intuitive eating are not as focused on the thin ideal. They actually show an increased variety of foods. They have increased body appreciation, increased body trust, increased joys of eating, increased body cue and interoceptive awareness. So they're able to listen to the cues their body gives them and honor them in an intuitive eating way. Actually increased self-esteem and well-being. There's been studies to show that it has an increase or decrease of triglycerides and increases the healthy cholesterol, decrease in disordered eating, increase in proactive eating, optimism, and an increased glycemic control. So I love this chart because I think it just shows that, just because it's not the traditional way of how we've approached health and wellness doesn't mean that it's wrong, right? So now that it's being studied more and more, we're really getting a lot of data that supports this eating approach. Okay, so very similar to what I did in the health at every size portion of, I get a lot of kind of the same qualms about intuitive eating. So I put this, what about, which are totally natural questions. So I have a lot of people say, well, isn't emotional eating bad? Well, for some people it can. And in the intuitive eating book, it helps you kind of decipher like, there is an emotional eating aspect that is very normal and it's part of the human experience, but there's also an emotional eating part that can be detrimental to health, both on the emotional restricting of food or the emotional overeating of food. And so, like I mentioned before, that food is so much more than nutrition and it's emotional in nature, right? Like when we celebrate food, when there's culture surrounded with food, it evokes an emotional response and it should, right? And so, just coming to terms with, and if you feel like emotional eating is an issue for you, I really encourage you to meet with a dietitian or a therapist who can kind of help you unpack that. I hear this all the time. If I did intuitive eating, I would eat an entire cheesecake. Well, that might happen once, but what about every day, right? And so Evelyn Tribole talks a lot about the habituation response of when it's not so exciting, when you remove the energy around it and it's just neutral, it's just food, there's a lot less likelihood that you might eat a whole cheesecake, right? And I imagine if you ate a whole cheesecake every day, you probably wouldn't feel very good. And so that's kind of how I debunk that. And I'm like, you know, you might eat an entire cheesecake because you've been depriving of it yourself for the last 20 years. So if you have a bite and you're like, I have permission to eat this, we definitely see a swing of like, now I can have all these foods, but the idea is that we come back into this place where you're able to make, you know, a wide variety of food choices. If I had my choice, I would only eat unhealthy foods. I like to tell people your body is very smart. As much as we try to outsmart it, your body sends you a lot of cues. So I give the example of when I'm camping or on a road trip, I'm typically eating like more convenience or prepackaged foods. Like when I go camping, it's like beef jerky, trail mix, chips. And when I get home, I'm like, I really want fresh vegetables. That's not because I have to have fresh vegetables, but my body's like, hey, that sounds good. So our body kind of has its own gauge that helps us get a wide variety of foods. And sometimes it takes, you know, again, retuning into that interoceptive awareness so that you can make those food choices. Another one, I love food too much. I can't be trusted. I can't have these foods in my house. And again, you know, the intuitive eating principles really help you build that trust back in yourself. And when those foods aren't deprived, even a perceived deprivation, and that removes that habitual response, like they're not as exciting anymore. And so that helps you rebuild trust back into your body. I hear a lot of people say, well, I'm addicted to sugar. I can't eat sugar. Well, the research that I know, and I know that there's, you know, a wide variety of research on this topic, but from my experience working with clients, sugar addiction is usually caused by carbohydrate deprivation. The research studies that have been done by rats, so they, which is where a lot of this research comes from, they have one rat who gets an unlimited access to sugar water, and another rat who gets intermittent access. And when the rat who has intermittent access is deprived, there is like a compulsive response to that food. And this is not to take away anyone's experience of feeling like they're addicted to sugar. I definitely think that feeling is real, but it's just, again, another thing to unpack that gives us information and, you know, how do we apply intuitive eating to your lived experiences? And again, people say, well, I have diabetes, I have to eat a certain way. Intuitive eating works with all medical concerns. Again, it just takes the focus off weight loss. Okay, so we have a few minutes. I just wanted to talk about a few resources. So some books, Intuitive Eating, obviously, there's a new edition out, Body Respect by Linda Bacon. She's, actually, her name is Lindo now, previously Linda. She wrote a book, the book Body Respect and Health at Every Size. Christy Harrison, who I used the quote for the diet culture quote in the beginning, she wrote a book called Anti-Diet, which is fabulous. And then Heidi Schauster has a book called Nourished. And then I gave you guys some list of podcasts if you're ever interested. The one I would most highly recommend is the one at the bottom, the 10% Happier with Dan Harris. It's episode 220, and he interviews Evelyn Tribole. She is a woman of so much joy. Her laugh is infectious, and she talks about intuitive eating in such a relatable way that I recommend it to a lot of people. And then I just wanted to close with this. This is in the introduction of the new intuitive eating book. And this is my wish for all of you in this presentation, that may you all have dignity, health, and happiness, regardless of your body shape or size, and may you never doubt your inner wisdom and experiences. So thank you all so much for being here and taking time out of your day. I know everyone's busy and it's crazy out there. So thanks for sharing your afternoon with me.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you so much. That was awesome. I do have some questions for you. We have a few moments. Do you mind sticking around for a bit? Great.
Yeah.
So let's see. The first question, someone has asked me the slideshow. So if you're comfortable, I can share the slideshow if that's all right with you, with our attendees.
Yeah.
Okay. The next is, do you see people who don't struggle with an eating disorder, or do you have a referral list of people who follow HAES in the area?
Yeah, so I do see people who don't have eating disorders, like people who want to heal their relationship with their food and body. And there are actually, we have a really great HAES oriented practitioners in Boise. So I'm more than happy to share that list with Anna of people who are accepting clients or who have a health at every size approach. And we actually have a health at every size group here in Boise that's for providers and community. We haven't been meeting because of COVID, but we usually get together once a month and just kind of talk and vent about our experiences and frustrations going against a culture that is a very health at every size approach. So that's always an option as well.
Great. I would love for you to send me that list of resources, and I'll share with our attendee list. Okay, the next one is, okay, 18 months ago, I decided to be a vegetarian. Is that healthy? Should I keep doing that?
Yeah, so just up front, I'm a dietitian, but not your dietitian, and so I can't necessarily make that choice for you. But I would just say, if you had more questions about it, meeting with a dietitian or reading the Intuitive Eating book. And like I said before, when making food choices, it should enhance your life, not take away from it. And so I guess just kind of like evaluating your intention behind it and how it enhances your life and kind of why you did it. That would be my general recommendation, but nothing specifically.
Awesome. Okay, the next tip, or the next question, do you have tips for someone that is pre-diabetic? My highest A1C has been 6.0. I'm also a vegetarian.
Okay. Yeah, so I would meet with a dietitian. So I'm going to name drop someone. Rhonda O'Brien is an eating disorder dietitian in Boise, and she's also a certified eating or diabetic educator. And so there's definitely a way to kind of like mesh all this together, because again, it's, you know, doing behaviors that promote your health and well-being. So there's definitely a way to combine the both. Is that what the question was?
I think generally, I think you're basically said like it's best to speak with the dietitian about specific health concerns and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the next question is, are there HAES practitioners available in Northern Idaho that you're aware of?
Yes, there is one dietitian. She's in Moscow, and her name is Anna Grindlin, and she has a private practice that's called Three Forks Nutrition.
Let me type that in real quick. Three Forks Nutrition. Okay, awesome. Okay, so we have another question. I'm kind of going through these quickly. Regarding medical providers, PCPs, physical therapists, etc., it can be expensive and daunting to find a provider who will see you for more than your size. Are there any suggestions how to navigate that barrier outside of just going to new providers after providers to try and find one that meets your needs?
Yeah, my heart goes out to you if this question is for you or a loved one. My heart really goes out to you because it's a huge issue. There is a community resource here. Amy Pence Brown is a fat activist in Boise, and she has a Facebook group called Rad Fat Collective. In this group, it's not just limited to people in larger bodies, but they have a lot of recommendations of providers who they trust and that don't focus on their size. So if you're on Facebook, that would be a really great group. Also, I know it's really hard, but advocating for yourself, and you know, I've had clients like set up those boundaries at the beginning of the session and saying like, hey, I'm working with a dietitian or I'm not. I really don't want to focus on my weight today. Or you can be declined to be weighed. Also, that's your right as a patient. I don't get weighed at the doctor's office anymore. And I live in a pretty normal end, large body. And so it's still really hard for me to do that and advocate for myself. So I would say, yeah, get a community around you, and the Rad Fat Collective is a great place to get resources for primary care doctors, physical therapists, and things like that that support a more weight neutral approach.
Awesome. It looks like Anna Grindlin is actually on this webinar right now.
And
she just thanked you, and she provided her website, which I will share in the chat box. Danielle, are you comfortable with your email being shared out?
Yes, but actually, can I give you my one for my blog? So it's not my personal. Okay.
Great. So yeah, send me that in the resources list, and I'll send it out to everyone if that's okay with you.
Yep.
Quickly, okay. So I see, Anna, we will share your. I'll send your resources out or your website out to everyone as well, Anna. So thank you for providing that. And then the next would be, I've been diagnosed with type 2. Maybe diabetes, but I've been diagnosed with type 2 and have had multiple surgeries restricting some movements. What would you suggest for restricted movement with type 2 diabetes?
So I would do and I think, so I'm also going to say this, you can always call a provider and interview them before you make the choice to give them your business or come to their practice. So I would say, you know, if you're wanting to meet with a physical therapist or a trainer, you know, calling ahead, and I think it's worth, I know it can be expensive, but I think it's worth meeting with them so they can help you come up with some movement that works best for your current body. And I would call them and say like, hey, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z, and I want to make sure I'm with a provider that respects my, altered range. I'm assuming like mobility is altered here. And then again, setting the boundaries if, not talking about weight is important for you. If that answered the question.
It looks like I am not getting a response back, so it looks like perhaps that was answered. Thank you so much. And then just everyone, I put the link to Danielle's webinar for next week on Wednesday at the same time. I think it's the 22nd. Yes. So feel free to register for that one. That one is going to be geared more towards providers. So yeah, we just hope you'll join us. But Danielle, thank you so much for your time and your expertise and your just positive energy for all of us this afternoon. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to send out those resources that you'll shoot my way. But anyway, thank you, everyone. I hope to see you next week. You can come see Danielle speak again, and I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.